Alright, welcome back to Audzone, and in this video I want to show you how to use checklists in Audzone for various appointment types. Now to do that I'm going to start a new appointment, and in this case I just go and click appointment here at the moment. Well, actually I can assign that to John straight away. Now I select the category of appointment, and in this case let's say we are going to do an HSP appointment and we choose the client review 9:30-9:40. We are going to create the session now. So here we have the session, and in the normal context I would obviously start the recording here. Always good to have a look if the VU meter is showing some jumping bars, just to make sure that it's recording. But in this video I want to focus on the bottom section here on the checklist. This checklist for the HSP appointments has been assigned when you imported the appointment types. If you haven't done that yet, I recommend that you go back to the video that explains how to import appointment types from your CRM system. Now here we see the checklist, and this has been created according to the HSP contract with all the requirements for a 9:30-9:40. It's basically the requirements of claiming. Now I know that for a senior clinician that may well be all in the memory of the clinician, but for new clinicians this may very well be helpful. You can also use checklists for private appointments if you want to monitor the compliance to company-wide requirements for an appointment, for example. So the clinician can engage with this checklist in multiple ways. They can actually go ahead and click them off. They could also leave comments in the section below here. They don't necessarily have to check them off. They can just go through it step by step if they want to without checking it off. The note would just make a note that the checklist hadn't been ticked off. But anything that you tick off here or that you write into the comments will be used for the generation of the clinical report and the clinical note for this session. Now let me show you quickly how you can actually set up these checklists for other appointment types. So the first step in this, you go on the settings panel in Audzone, you go to appointment types, and now let's search for an appointment, for example, that doesn't yet have a checklist. So let's use a basic wax removal, for example. You see if you click this here, that the wax removal shows a clinical note template has been assigned and a document template. So that is likely an assessment report or a wax removal report in this case. But there hasn't been any checklist template assigned to that. So what we can do is we can go choose and choose a checklist that is already here. Now, if you don't find a pre-created checklist, and most checklists that are in Audzone have been created for HSP appointments, you can actually create your own checklist. So we can say generate with AI, and now we basically want to write in here all the requirements that you have for a wax removal appointment in your company. So to get started, you basically write into the checklist requirements all the requirements that you have, such as a medical history review, otoscopy, education on the process, tympanometry and hearing screening. That's, for example, what I would use in my hearing clinic. And then you can say next. I would, in this case, skip the documents for the compliance, because this is just a wax removal appointment. This is not really needed at this stage, and we can discuss that in another video. So we basically just skip that and say generate checklist. Now it takes a couple of seconds or just a moment, and AI will analyze what you've written in there, and it will create a checklist. So now you've got your checklist: history review, otoscopy, education, TIMP, and audiometry, or like just a screening audiometry. And you can give these items certain options. So you can click in settings here, and the item type, here's a checkbox, which I personally prefer. You can make this a required or non-required item, and you can also have a conditional logic that is dependent on other items previously, for example. Now you could, for example, change that to a multi-line or a single line text input or a drop-down. I personally do like the checklists and the checkboxes. So now in this case, we just save the checklist. Yeah. And this is now an earwax removal checklist that has been assigned to this appointment type, and in this case to earwax removal. Now, just to demonstrate how that works, we can go back into sessions. So we are going to create a new appointment. We are going to do that for John Demo. Go under private rehabilitation, search for wax removal, click this, and then we create the session. Now, once the session is created, you see that the checklist populates right down the bottom here. And that basically means you now see that every single appointment type that has wax removal for every one of your practitioners will show them this checklist. Okay, I hope this clarified a little bit how you can use checklist. If there are any questions, please feel free to reach out to us. Thank you very much.